Rev up your engines! Yo, so Scotty, what are your thoughts on all the people who believe every word you say? Heck, I don't even believe every word I say. I try to find the best knowledge about cars, machines, philosophy, if you want to go that far. I'm an educated man. I almost finished my PhD. I got my dissertation grant and left. Never came back, but what the heck, almost there. Never believe everything anybody says. Always question everything. And let me tell you something. When I see something and then I see that it contradicts what I've said in the past, and I see, hey, that's right, things have changed, I'll admit it. Really, for the money, the best cars you can get are Toyotas. If somebody comes out with a better car, hey, I'll tell people they came out with a better car. I have no vested interest in any of these companies. None of them are giving me free cars. None of them are paying me to advertise their cars. I fix them. So I basically go and analyze what I found through time, and like anything else, if somebody has a better way of fixing something, a better tool, or a better built vehicle, hey, I'll pass it on. I get feedback. I work on them. I'm always making videos of people's cars, see what history they had compared to other people's history and my experience with them, and that's what I pass on to you. But don't believe anything anybody says. Hey, my wife doesn't believe anything I say. And we're still married after 53 years, so. Jason Horvath said, is a tire plug a permanent fix? Very good question, and people have been arguing that point for decades. They say, it's a temporary fix, then you got to take the tire, go to a shop, they have to take it apart, they got to patch it on the inside, put it back together, rebalance it. But, on the other hand, I've been plugging them since I was a kid when I was 14, my father's Texaco gas station in Lewiston, New York. And I've never had one go bad. I've been doing it long enough, I know how to plug them. You're not supposed to plug them on the side, only where the tread is, but I'll give you a hilarious example. When I was a kid at that station, we had a salesman that came, and he sold those plugs. And on his station wagon, he had one tire, and he had like 50 plugs on the sidewall. And he'd been driving it for years that way, and it still didn't have a problem. I don't advise that, but for the regular plugs in, they do work quite well if you put them in correctly. The rubber vulcanizes as you drive down the road and seals it. I've never had any problems. There's only one thing about plugging or fixing any tire, and that's this. A lot of times, the reason you get a nail or something in it is because your tread is so thin, it doesn't save you from nails and glass. So if you plug a tire, but you see the tire starting to get really bald, you need to buy a new tire soon anyway. If you got massive tread, generally you're not going to get anything in it. But if your tread's all worn out, plug it, but then you really want to buy a new tire relatively soon. Darren Karen says, Scotty, I got a 2015 Ford Escape. It has white exhaust, first startup if it sits for 1 or 2 days. Any worries? Well, what you want to do is check your coolant. If you're not losing any coolant at all, it's not a blowing head gasket. You'd lose coolant. If you're losing coolant, your head gasket's probably blowing. Then you do my video test. How to tell if your head gasket's blowing, Scotty, and you can figure it out. Now, sometimes it's just they burn a little bit of oil, and when they sit, the oil in the head, if the valve seals are worn, oil will pool in, and when you start it, the white smoke is oil burning because it's sat and it kind of got everything oily inside. And as long as you keep the oil up, if it burns a little oil, it's not anything to really worry about. Dave says, what are your thoughts on electric water pumps and electric power steering pumps? I have a new Camry. Well, that's the way of the future, and you can't escape it. A lot of it I don't personally like because they're electronic, they're going to break eventually, let's face it, especially electric water pump, electricity and water. What could possibly go wrong? Especially in a car where it's heated water. It gets real hot. Eventually the seals go, the pump will short up. Now Toyota's doing it because it's more efficient. BMW did it ages ago where they started putting electric water pumps on their cars because it's a more efficient way of driving them. And Toyota wants to get the most efficient engine they can, and their new engines are like 15-20% more efficient in terms of heat energy than their older ones, and they're going to continue to go that way. Now electric power steering, it's another example of making cars cheaper. It costs money to build hydraulic pumps and the hoses, and then a power steering assembly that can take 1,500 PSI. Totally reliable. They've had them for ages, right? But they can do it cheaper electronically. It can all be controlled by computers, and so they're going to continue to do that. They're not going to go back into the past. They can make them cheaper. They can make them so computers control them better, and they're going to continue to do that regardless. Falcon 7826 says, Scotty, what do you think is better, bolts or lug nuts? My Volkswagen uses bolts instead of lug nuts. Bolts are actually better for corrosion because they screw in and they don't corrode as much. When you got a bolt sticking on the axle and then you put a lug nut on it, corrosion can get on it and they can stick. It's actually long-term safer to have the bolt going into the hole. Of course, it makes it more of a pain in the butt to work on. If you got a heavy tire, you got to hold it up and line the bolts up and quick put them on, or have a jack that holds the tire up into place, because with the ones with the bolts sticking out and you just put lug nuts, you just slide it over them, you can get it on a lot easier. But it's actually better for corrosion. Nuts will rust on or they'll break off. Those very rarely break off. It's a better design for anti-rust, but a bigger pain to put them together too. Realize that. Jill says, Scotty, why do you push Toyotas? Also, why do you hate a genius like Musk? Well, I don't push anything. Nobody pays me to say anything. Toyota, they won't give me free cars to drive around and analyze because they don't like what I say about their cars either. Watch my videos, you'll see. I show what's wrong with every single car out there. The thing is, Toyotas generally have a lot less problems than the other manufacturers. Now, I don't hate Musk. And yes, he's a genius, but he's not a car genius. Realize one thing. He just bought the Tesla company. The guy who started it invented Tesla as a limited amount of luxury vehicles that would cost a lot of money, and that's what the guy did. Well, then Elon bought it and said, I'm going to sell these things to everybody. Keeps raising the price, they get more and more expensive. Eventually, he's going to run out of rich people that are going to buy those things. And give you a perfect example. I just rode from Rhode Island to Tennessee. On the interstate highway system, I saw 2 Teslas. That was it. Now, when I was in Rhode Island, I saw hundreds of them because there's a lot of million and billionaires around there, and they don't care. They got money, but for the average American, spending that kind of money for a relatively poorly built vehicle that weighs a ton, costs a ton, small electric cars for scooting around, yeah. Cross country where there's no infrastructure, not a smart idea yet. I don't hate the guy, but the deals he pulls with Bitcoin and stuff, buying them and selling them and saying it's good, saying it's bad. The guy's made an awful lot of money, and almost everybody that's made that kind of money has made it by some underhanded deals here and there, let me tell you. I've met these people, I never met him, but I met other million and billionaires, and they usually made their money in a relatively sleazy fashion. Dennis LeBlanc said, if you had to teach one thing to students in high school about cars, what would it be? Drive sober. Do not drive under the influence of anything. Maybe caffeine, drink a coffee or something so you don't fall asleep. Teenagers think they're indestructible. There's something about the human brain that, especially the male brain, it's not fully functional until you're like 25. They don't comprehend that actions have reactions and consequences. I see that all the time with my 21-year-old grandson. I mean, drive sober. Don't drink. Don't do drugs while you're driving. Don't just jump in and go as fast as you can and then smash into a tree. That's my advice. Learn how to drive correctly. And if you're talking about what kind of car to buy, all these people are pushing electric cars. Well, Scotty, I shouldn't buy a gasoline car. They're all going to be electric. Yeah, they might all be electric 20, 30, 40 years from now. But believe you me, gasoline cars are going to be around the United States for quite some time. So don't worry about getting a used Toyota Corolla and you think, hey, that thing might last another 10, 20 years. There'll still be gasoline in the United States. They can just about guarantee you that. There's too much infrastructure that's existing for that and not for either hydrogen or electric cars with batteries. No, it's not going to happen for quite some time. So don't worry and go out and spend a fortune on a stupid electric car just yet. CL says, Scotty, do you recommend X-Tool scan tools? Yeah, you know, it's a new Chinese company, and I have like 8 of their different scan tools. And I got to say, for the money, they are pretty good scan tools. They sell one that's like $139 that you use with your phone, you know. You hook it up with your phone wirelessly. And for $139, it does a pretty good job. And they have other scan tools that are $250 that work quite a bit better than the $139 one. And for most of you people out there, they have a $600 one. It's called a D7. And that does phenomenal amount of stuff that would blow your mind. Plus, they give you free updates for like 2 years. So it's a pretty good company as far as I've seen. They're a newer company, so they're trying to blow other people out of the water by adding a lot more than the other companies do. The ones I've had, you know, like I say, you get the real cheap one, 100-something bucks. It still does quite a bit of stuff. It's not a junker by any stretch of the imagination. And you go up to their $600 one, it really does a lot for 600 bucks. There's no arguing that. Tom Baldwin says, I want a Cat D7. Got to move some stuff around. Well, you're going to move some serious stuff if you're looking at a Caterpillar D7. You're getting a giant earth-moving machine. Now, those things cost a fortune, and they use up diesel fuel like no tomorrow. You better have a big pocket for buying fuel. But if you want to move stuff around, a Cat D7 is the way to go. I watched that YouTube video about the killer bulldozer where that guy turned his into a machine and then attacked the people that had harassed him where he was living, I got a Montana or someplace, right? Those are phenomenal machines if you can afford one. They don't give them away, and then they use a ton of fuel. But they're great construction. You can't drive them on the road. They're not road legal, but you got land, you want to move stuff around. That's certainly a good one. Most people just rent them from people, though, or pay a guy to come do it because they cost so much money. Unless you run a business, it's kind of foolhardy to buy one. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.